The phone stayed connected for 43 seconds after Emily thought she'd hung up. I know because I counted every one of them while my daughter's voice drifted through the speaker, talking about me like I was a piece of furniture she wanted removed from her wedding. God, I know, Emily said, her voice bright with laughter. He's just so big for a wedding, you know? Like, he doesn't fit. Damien's parents are sophisticated people, and Dad's going to show up in his work boots talking about drywall. Someone laughed. Her future mother-in-law, probably. The woman who'd looked at my calloused hands during our first meeting, like I'd dragged them through sewage. He'll embarrass us, Emily continued. I tried to tell him the wedding was more of an intimate thing, but he got all weird about it, like I owe him something. I sat in my truck outside the hardware store, engine running, hand gripping my phone so hard the case cracked. The wedding was in 3 days. I'd already paid for the flowers, $1,500 worth of white roses because Emily said they reminded her of her mother. Your father built you a life, I said to the empty cab, but Emily couldn't hear me anymore. She'd finally realized the call was still connected and cut it off with a sharp click. I made 3 calls in the next 5 minutes. The first was to Jerry Patterson, who owned the venue. We'd gone to high school together, back when I was still stupid enough to think hard work meant something. Jerry owed me for the job I'd done on his lake house, the one where I'd worked 16-hour days to finish before his daughter's graduation party. Jerry, I said, the Grant wedding this Saturday. I need you to cancel it. Tom, I can't just... The deposit check I wrote you, it's going to bounce. I'm calling the bank right now to stop payment. You'll be out $12,000 if you let that wedding happen on your property. Silence. Then, Jesus, Tom, what's going on? You'll read about it in the papers. Cancel the wedding. Tell them the pipes burst. Tell them whatever you want. I hung up before he could argue. The second call was to Michelle Santos, the wedding planner Emily had hired against my advice. Michelle charged $200 an hour to tell people where to put flowers. I'd paid her retainer in cash, $5,000, and kept the receipt. Michelle, this is Tom Grant, Emily Grant's father. Mr. Grant, I was just going over the final details. The wedding's off. I'm the one paying you, and I'm pulling the plug. Every vendor you've hired on my dime, you call them right now and cancel. If you don't, I'll sue you for breach of contract and fraud. You can't. Try me. I've got 3 lawyers who'd take this case for free just to see the look on your face. That wasn't true. I had one lawyer, Stan Morrison, who mostly handled contract disputes for my construction business. But Michelle didn't know that. The third call was the one that mattered. Tom. My son Lucas's voice was smooth, practiced. He'd gotten good at talking since he'd left construction behind and moved into consulting, whatever the hell that meant. What's up? Your sister's wedding is cancelled. What? Dad, what are you... I heard her, Lucas, on the phone, talking about how I'm too big for her fancy wedding, how I'll embarrass her in front of her new family. Dad, come on. She didn't mean... You knew about this. Silence. That told me everything. You both decided I was an embarrassment. You both agreed I should be pushed out. So I'm making it easy for you. No venue, no planner, no wedding. She wants to get married without her father. She can figure out how to do it without her father's money. This is insane, Lucas said, but his voice had lost its smooth edge. You can't just... I already did. And Lucas, that apartment you've been asking about, the one downtown I bought as an investment, the one you wanted me to sign over to you for your business expansion, consider that conversation permanently closed. I hung up before he could respond and sat in my truck, watching people walk in and out of the hardware store, like their lives hadn't just caught fire. My hands were shaking, 52 years old, and my hands were shaking like I was some scared kid. My phone started ringing immediately. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I turned the phone off and drove home. The house was quiet when I got there. It had been quiet for 3 years, since the day after my wife Sarah's funeral, when both kids had packed their things and left. Lucas had an apartment closer to his office. Emily moved in with Damien 6 months later. They'd both said they needed space to grieve, but grief doesn't require a forwarding address. I sat in Sarah's chair, the green recliner she'd bought at a yard sale and reupholstered herself, and stared at the wall where our family photos hung. Emily at 5, missing her front teeth. Lucas at 7, holding up a trophy from his baseball league. Sarah and me on our wedding day, young and stupid and convinced that love was enough to build a life on. Turned out it was enough, just barely. We'd made it work for 26 years before the cancer took her, and in that time, we'd built something real. A business that employed 17 people. A house that was paid off. 2 kids who went to college without loans. And those 2 kids had just decided I was too common for their new lives. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd turned it back on without thinking, an old habit from years of being on call for emergency jobs. The screen showed 23 missed calls and 41 text messages. I didn't read any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the files I'd been keeping for the past 2 years. The ones I'd started after Lucas asked me to invest in his consulting firm, and I'd done some basic research into what exactly he was consulting about. The spreadsheets told an interesting story. Money flowing from my business account into Lucas's company, then out again to a dozen different shell corporations. Invoices for services never rendered. Contracts that existed only on paper. My son, it turned out, wasn't just a consultant. He was a con artist, and I'd been his primary mark. I'd known about it for 18 months. I'd said nothing, watching the numbers grow, documenting everything, waiting to see if Lucas would come clean on his own. He never did. Instead, he kept asking for more, kept bleeding my business dry while smiling to my face. And Emily, sweet Emily, who used to bring me coffee at the construction sites when she was little, who used to sit on my shoulders and point at buildings I'd helped create. She'd married Damien Vaughan 6 months ago in a courthouse ceremony, no family invited. I'd found out from a Facebook post. Damien worked in private equity, which apparently meant buying struggling businesses, gutting them, and selling off the pieces. He'd been sniffing around my company for a year, sending friendly emails about partnership opportunities and strategic alliances. Now I understood why. Emily had been feeding him information. Numbers, client lists, upcoming projects. Everything he needed to either steal my business or destroy it. I'd raised thieves. The realization sat in my chest like a stone. Heavy, cold, immovable. My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Dad, please." Emily's voice was thick with tears. "You have to fix this. The venue cancelled, the planner quit. All the vendors are backing out. The wedding is in 3 days. 3 days. Then you'd better work fast," I said. "This is insane. Over something I said in private? I was just venting, Dad. Everyone complains about their parents sometimes." "You said I was too big for your wedding, like I'm some kind of stain you need to scrub away before your fancy new family sees it." "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said, Emily. You've meant it for years. You and your brother both. I'm just the bank account now, right? The place you make withdrawals from when you need something. But God forbid I actually show up and remind people where the money came from. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it sounded wrong coming out of my mouth. "You want to talk about fair? I worked 80-hour weeks to pay for your college. I took out a second mortgage so Lucas could start his business. I gave up every weekend for 5 years so you two could have everything you wanted. And now I'm too big for your wedding." "Dad, here's what's going to happen, Emily. You're going to figure out your wedding on your own. No venue, no planner, no money from me. You want to get married, you do it yourself. And then you're going to sit down with your brother and explain to him that the gravy train just derailed. You can't do this. Watch me." I hung up and turned the phone off again. The silence in the house was complete. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the clock ticking on the wall, the sound of my own breathing. These were the sounds of my life now, empty sounds in an empty house. I thought about Sarah. about how she'd handled this situation. She'd always been the bridge between me and the kids, the one who could smooth over arguments, find compromises, make everyone feel heard. Without her, we'd fallen apart. Or maybe we'd always been falling apart, and she'd just been holding us together through sheer force of will. Either way, she was gone now, and I was alone with the mess she'd left behind. I opened my laptop again and started going through the files more carefully. Every transaction, every invoice, every email. I needed to know exactly how much they'd taken, exactly how they'd done it, exactly what laws they'd broken, because if I was going to do this, if I was going to destroy my own family, I was going to do it right. The numbers were worse than I'd thought. $400,000, maybe more, spread out over 3 years, hidden in legitimate-looking transactions, buried under layers of corporate paperwork. Lucas had been smart about it. Not smart enough, but smart. I found emails between Lucas and Damien discussing my business like it was already theirs. Plans for expansion, for restructuring, for maximizing value. They talked about me like I was an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved. In one email, Damien referred to me as the old man and suggested they could ease him out once they had control of the company. Emily was copied on that email. She hadn't objected. I sat there reading for hours, watching my children's betrayal unfold in black and white. By the time I closed the laptop, it was past midnight. My coffee had gone cold. My back ached from sitting too long in Sarah's chair. But I knew what I had to do. Stan Morrison looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "You want to do what?" he said, reading glasses perched on his nose, my file folder open on his desk. "Audit. Full forensic audit of my business accounts for the past 3 years. And I want you to pursue legal action against every fraudulent transaction. Tom, these transactions were authorized by you. Under false pretenses, Lucas told me the money was for legitimate business expenses. He provided fake invoices, fake contracts, fake everything. That's fraud. That's embezzlement." Stan leaned back in his chair. We'd known each other for 15 years, ever since he'd handled the paperwork when I incorporated my business. He was a good lawyer, which meant he was cautious. "You're talking about your son," he said. "I'm talking about a thief who happens to share my DNA. If we pursue this, it goes public. There'll be police reports, possibly criminal charges. Your family will be—" "My family is already gone, Stan. I'm just making it official." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but I'm going to need everything. Every document, every email, every text message. If we're doing this, we do it right." I pulled out a flash drive and set it on his desk. 3 years of records, bank statements, invoices, emails, text messages, everything. Stan picked up the drive like it was a live grenade. "How long have you been planning this?" "Long enough." The audit took 2 weeks to set up. Stan brought in a forensic accountant named Patricia Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, who looked at my books like she was reading a mystery novel. She worked fast, cross-referencing every transaction, tracking down every shell company, building a paper trail that led straight to Lucas's front door. "Mr. Grant," she said during our second meeting, "your son has stolen approximately $470,000 from you over the past 30 months. The number hit me like a fist. I'd known it was bad, but hearing it out loud made it real. "Can we prove it?" I asked. "Oh, yes, he wasn't even careful. He used the same company names multiple times, recycled invoices, created obvious patterns. It's like he didn't think anyone would check." "He didn't," I said. "He thought I was too stupid to notice." Patricia didn't argue with that assessment. While she worked on Lucas's case, I worked on something else. The apartment, the one downtown that Lucas wanted so badly. I'd bought it 15 years ago for $90,000. It was worth close to $1 million now, sitting in the middle of a neighborhood that had gone from working class to trendy in the span of a decade. Lucas had been asking about it for 2 years, dropping hints that it would be perfect for his business headquarters. What he didn't know was that the apartment was already spoken for. I'd set up a trust years ago, right after Sarah died, and put the property in it. The trust had very specific instructions about who could access it and under what conditions. None of those conditions included Lucas getting his hands on it. I called the trust administrator, a guy named Robert Hayes, who worked for the bank. "Robert, I need to make some changes to the Grant Family Trust." "Sure thing, Tom. What are we looking at?" "I want Lucas and Emily removed as beneficiaries." Silence on the other end. Then, "Tom, are you sure about this? That's a pretty significant change." "I'm sure. Draw up the papers. I'll sign them this week." "Can I ask why?" "You can ask. I won't answer." He drew up the papers. I signed them in his office 3 days later, watching as everything I'd built was legally redirected away from my children. It felt like cutting off a limb, necessary but nauseating. Emily called me 17 times during those 3 days. I didn't answer. Lucas sent emails that started polite and got progressively more desperate. I deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. The wedding date came and went. I spent it at the construction site, working alongside my crew on a commercial renovation downtown. The guys knew something was wrong, but they didn't ask. Blue-collar courtesy meant minding your own business unless someone asked for help. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it instead. It was a photo. Emily and Damien standing in what looked like a courthouse, both dressed nicely but not in wedding clothes. A woman in a judge's robe stood between them, smiling. Emily's expression was tight, forced. Damien looked smug. The message below the photo said, "Thanks for nothing, Dad." I stared at that photo for 5 minutes before putting my phone away and getting back to work. Frank, my foreman, came over around 2 o'clock with a couple of sandwiches from the deli down the street. He handed me one without saying anything, and we ate together in the unfinished lobby, sitting on buckets, surrounded by the smell of fresh paint and sawdust. "You doing okay, boss?" he finally asked. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine, Frank." He nodded and didn't push it. That was one thing I appreciated about working with guys like Frank. They understood that sometimes a man didn't want to talk about his problems. Sometimes he just wanted to work. We finished the sandwich in silence, then got back to it. I spent the rest of the day installing crown molding, measuring and cutting and nailing, losing myself in the rhythm of physical labor. My hands knew what to do without my brain getting involved. It was meditative in a way, peaceful. By the time we wrapped up for the day, it was past 6. The sun was setting, painting the unfinished walls orange and gold. I stood in the empty space and looked around at what we'd built. In 3 months, this would be a restaurant. People would come here to eat and laugh and celebrate. They'd never know that the man who built it had spent the grand opening day of his daughter's supposed wedding installing trim and trying not to think about everything he'd lost. I drove home in the dark. The house was still empty, still quiet. I made myself a frozen dinner and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, not bothering to sit down. Then I went to my office and opened my laptop. Patricia had sent over the preliminary audit results. I read through them slowly, methodically, making notes in the margins. Every fraudulent transaction was highlighted in yellow. Every forged signature was marked with a red flag. Every piece of evidence that would hold up in court was carefully documented. It was damning, absolutely damning. My phone rang. Emily again. I let it go to voicemail. She'd called so many times over the past few days that my voicemail was full. I hadn't listened to any of the messages. I didn't want to hear her excuses. Didn't want to hear her justifications. Didn't want to hear her try to explain why she'd betrayed me. Instead, I kept reading, kept documenting, kept building my case. Around midnight, I found something interesting. An email chain between Lucas and Damien from 2 years ago. discussing something called Project Takeover. The emails were vague, carefully worded, but the intent was clear. They were planning to force me out of my own company. They'd been planning it for years. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. First, bleed the company dry through fraudulent transactions, making it look like I was mismanaging the business. Then, when the company was struggling, offer to help by bringing in Damien as a partner. Once Damien had his foot in the door, they'd push me out entirely, claim I was too old, too out of touch, too stuck in my ways to run a modern business. And Emily was supposed to be the bridge. The loving daughter who convinced her stubborn father to step aside for his own good. It almost worked. If I hadn't overheard that phone call, if Emily hadn't forgotten to hang up, they might have pulled it off. I saved the emails to a separate folder and made a note to send them to Patricia in the morning. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, thinking about the family I used to have. Sarah would have been horrified. She'd raised our kids to be honest, hard-working, decent. She'd taught them right from wrong, made them volunteer at the food bank every Thanksgiving, insisted they write thank you notes for every gift. She'd been so proud of them, and they'd turned into this. I wondered if it was my fault, if I'd been too lenient, too generous, too willing to give them everything they wanted, if I'd spoiled them so thoroughly that they couldn't tell the difference between earning something and taking it. But no, that wasn't right. Plenty of kids grew up with advantages and didn't turn into thieves. This was on them. They'd made their choices. Now I was making mine. Lucas showed up at my house on a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't. I was in the garage, working on an old dresser I'd picked up at an estate sale, when I heard his car pull into the driveway. A silver BMW, 3 years old, bought with money he'd stolen from me. I didn't go outside. He could come to me. He did, eventually, walking into the garage like he owned the place. He was wearing what he probably thought was casual clothing, designer jeans, and a button-down shirt that cost more than my monthly electric bill. His hair was styled, his face clean-shaven. He looked like a man who'd never done an honest day's work in his life. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. This is getting out of hand." I kept sanding the dresser, long, smooth strokes that stripped away the old varnish. "What's getting out of hand, Lucas?" "This vendetta you're on, cancelling Emily's wedding, refusing to answer our calls, hiding from us. It's childish." Childish. I set down the sandpaper and looked at him. "You steal $500,000 from me and I'm the one being childish." His face went pale. "I don't know what you're—" "Yes, you do. I had a forensic accountant go through my books. Every fake invoice, every shell company, every fraudulent transaction. I've got 3 years of evidence showing exactly how you've been bleeding my business dry." Lucas's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Dad, I can explain." "Don't. I don't want to hear it. I've heard enough of your explanations. They're all lies, and we both know it." "It was for the business. I was building something, and I needed capital. You were building a con, using my money to make it look legitimate. How many other people did you screw over, Lucas? How many other marks did you line up after you'd finished with me? That's not— You don't understand how business works, Dad. Sometimes you have to leverage opportunities." "I understand business just fine. I've been running one for 30 years. What I don't understand is how my son turned into a criminal." The word hung in the air between us. Criminal. It was the right word, the accurate word, but saying it out loud made something twist in my chest. Lucas's expression hardened. "Fine. You want to play it this way? I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight you on this." "Good luck with that. I've already filed a police report. The DA's office is reviewing the case right now." "You went to the police?" His voice rose, cracking. "Your own son?" "My own son is a thief. What did you expect me to do, Lucas? Pat you on the head and ask you to steal more?" He stood there, breathing hard, his face flushed. For a moment I thought he might take a swing at me. I almost wished he would. A physical fight would be simpler, cleaner than this. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "Emily was right about you. You're bitter and small, and you can't stand seeing your kids succeed." Succeed? Is that what you call it? Stealing from your father is succeeding. We were building something, both of us. Emily and Damien have plans, real plans for growing your company, turning it into something significant. But you're too stubborn to see it, too locked into your old ways of doing things. My old ways kept food on your table and a roof over your head. My old ways paid for your college, and your car, and every other thing you've taken for granted your entire life. And you never let us forget it, did you? Every conversation, every family dinner, it was always about how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed, like we owed you something for being born. You owed me honesty. You owed me respect. Instead, you treated me like an ATM with a pulse. Lucas shook his head. "I'm done with this. When you're ready to act like an adult, give me a call." He walked out of the garage and got into his BMW. The engine started with a quiet purr, and he backed out of the driveway without looking at me again. I went back to sanding the dresser. My hands were steady. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak, every groan of old wood seemed louder in the darkness. I kept replaying the conversation with Lucas, analyzing every word, every expression, looking for some sign that he felt remorse, that he understood what he'd done wrong. There wasn't one. He was angry that he'd been caught, not sorry that he'd stolen. In his mind, he was the victim here. I was the unreasonable one, the stubborn old man who couldn't see the bigger picture. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I was stuck in my ways. But I knew the difference between right and wrong, and what he'd done was wrong. Simple as that. I got up around 3 a.m. and went to my office. Patricia had sent over more files, deeper analysis of the fraudulent transactions. I read through them with a cup of coffee, making notes, building my understanding of exactly how Lucas had managed to steal so much for so long. The answer was depressingly simple. I'd trusted him. Every time he'd asked for money, I'd given it to him. Every invoice he'd submitted, I'd paid it. I'd never questioned, never verified, never doubted. Because he was my son, and I'd believed that meant something, I'd been wrong. Around 4 a.m, I found another interesting detail. Several of the shell companies Lucas had created were registered to an address in the Cayman Islands. That meant he wasn't just stealing from me, he was hiding the money offshore, probably to avoid taxes. That added tax evasion to the list of crimes. I sent an email to Patricia flagging the discovery. She responded within minutes, despite the early hour. Apparently, she didn't sleep much either. "Good catch," her email said. "This makes the case even stronger. Federal charges, not just state. Lucas is looking at serious time if convicted." Serious time. My son, in federal prison. The thought should have bothered me more than it did. I went back to bed around 5 but didn't sleep. Just lay there watching the dawn creep through the windows, thinking about all the choices that had led to this moment. Mine, Sarah's, Lucas's, Emily's. All the tiny decisions that had seemed so insignificant at the time but had added up to this. A family destroyed. A business nearly ruined. A father preparing to send his own children to prison. When the sun was fully up, I got dressed and went to the construction site. Frank was already there, setting up for the day, going through the plans with the crew. "Morning, boss," he said when he saw me. "You look like hell." "Didn't sleep much." "Yeah, I figured." "Listen, if you need to take some time off, we can handle things here. The job's on schedule, no problems." "I need to work, Frank. It's the only thing keeping me sane right now." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "All right, we're pouring concrete today. Could use your help if you're up for it." I was up for it. I spent the day mixing and pouring concrete, physical labor that left no room for thinking. By the end of the day, my back ached, my arms were sore, and I was covered in dust and sweat. It felt good. It felt real. It felt like something I could control. Patricia Chen called me 3 weeks later with an update. Mr. Grant, we've finished the audit. The total amount embezzled is $482,317. But that's not the interesting part. What's the interesting part? Your son didn't act alone. There are transactions tied to accounts controlled by your daughter and her husband. They were all working together. I sat down in my office chair, suddenly dizzy. All 3 of them. Yes, it looks like it started about 3 years ago, right after your wife passed away. Small amounts at first, testing to see if you'd notice. When you didn't, they got bolder. Your son-in-law appears to be the mastermind. He has a history of this kind of thing. What do you mean, a history? Damien Vaughan has been involved in 3 previous business ventures that ended in fraud investigations. He's never been charged, always managed to stay just on the legal side of the line, but the pattern is clear. He finds vulnerable businesses, infiltrates them through personal relationships, and bleeds them dry. And my daughter helped him. Yes, she provided access to your accounts, your files, your client lists. Without her, he wouldn't have been able to get as far as he did. I closed my eyes. Emily, my little girl, the one who used to draw pictures of buildings I'd worked on and tape them to the refrigerator. Emily, who'd cried in my arms after Sarah died and promised we'd always be a family. Emily, who'd betrayed me for money. Mr. Grant, are you still there? I'm here. What's our next step? Stan wants to meet with you. He says we need to discuss options. Stan's office was cold when I got there, the air conditioning set too high. He had files spread across his desk, thick folders full of documents that represented 3 years of theft. Tom, he said when I sat down, we need to talk about what happens next. You said that on the phone. This is serious. If we move forward with criminal charges, all 3 of them could face jail time. Lucas definitely will. He was the primary actor in most of the transactions. Emily and Damien might get off with probation if they cooperate, but it'll be public, very public. The media will cover it. Your business will be dragged through this. So what are you suggesting? That I let them get away with it? I'm suggesting you think carefully about what you want the outcome to be. Do you want justice or do you want revenge? What's the difference? Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making them hurt. They're not the same thing. I thought about that, about Lucas in his BMW, about Emily laughing on the phone, about Damien Vaughan sitting in my house during family dinners, smiling at me, while planning how to destroy everything I'd built. I want them to understand what they did, I said. I want them to face consequences, real consequences. Then we move forward with criminal charges. But Tom, once we do this, there's no going back. Your family will be destroyed, completely. It's already destroyed, Stan. I'm just making it official. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll file the paperwork with the DA's office. They'll probably want to meet with you, get a statement. This is going to take time. I've got time. The DA's office assigned the case to a prosecutor named Jennifer Walsh, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from me in a grey conference room and went through every transaction, every piece of evidence, building her case line by line. This is solid, she said when we finished. I can get a conviction on your son easily. The others might be trickier, but we'll make it work. How long? 6 months to trial, maybe. Could be longer if they fight it. Could be shorter if they take a plea deal. They won't take a deal. They think I'm bluffing. Are you? No. She smiled, a thin, humorless expression. Good. I hate it when parents cave at the last minute. Makes my job harder. I left her office feeling strangely calm. The wheels were in motion now. There was no stopping them, no turning back. Whatever happened next, I'd set it in motion deliberately, knowingly. I'd made my choice. The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but Lucas called me from the police station, his voice high and panicked. Dad, they arrested me. They're saying I embezzled money. This is insane. It's not insane, Lucas. It's accurate. You actually did it. You actually called the cops on your own son. Yes. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to me, to my career, to my life? I imagine it'll be roughly equivalent to what you did to mine. I need bail money. I almost laughed. Call your mother's family. I'm sure they'll help. Dad, please. I hung up and turned off my phone. Emily called from a different number that evening. Her voice was cold, controlled, nothing like the panic I'd heard from Lucas. You've gone too far, she said. Have I? Damien's lawyer says you don't have a case. Everything we did was legal. You authorized those transactions. Under false pretenses. That's fraud, Emily. You helped your husband commit fraud against your own father. We were trying to help you. The company was stagnant, going nowhere. Damien had plans to expand, to turn it into something real. But you were too proud to listen. So you decided to steal from me instead. It wasn't stealing. It was an investment. Tell that to the judge. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll never forgive you for this. Good. That makes us even. I hung up and sat in Sarah's chair, staring at the family photos on the wall. Tomorrow I'd take them down, pack them away somewhere I wouldn't have to look at them. Tonight I'd let myself remember when those smiling faces meant something. My phone buzzed with a text from Stan. All three posted bail. Preliminary hearing is set for 6 weeks from now. I texted back, good. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. My own breathing filled the silence. I thought about Sarah, about what she'd say if she could see me now. She'd probably tell me I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. She'd want me to find a way to fix this, to bring the family back together. But Sarah had never been betrayed by her own children. She'd never had to watch the people she'd raised turn into strangers. She'd died believing our family was solid, unbreakable. Maybe it was better that way. Better that she never saw what her children became. I sat there for a long time, thinking about everything and nothing. About the business I'd built with my own hands. About the house that was too big for one person. About the family photos I'd pack away tomorrow. About the empty years stretching a hey of me, alone in this big house with nothing but memories and regrets. Eventually I got up and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came. Damien Vaughan showed up at my construction site on a Tuesday afternoon, walking through the job site like he owned it. He was wearing a suit, which was stupid for a place full of sawdust and paint, but Damien had never been smart about the real world. I was on a ladder, installing crown molding in what would be a restaurant dining room. One of my guys, Frank, spotted Damien first and called up to me. "Boss, you got a visitor." I climbed down and saw Damien standing in the middle of the unfinished space, looking around with an expression that might have been contempt or might have been calculation. With him, it was hard to tell the difference. "Tom," he said, "we need to talk." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. This situation has gotten out of hand." I set down my nail gun and looked at him, really looked at him. Damien was 34, tall and good-looking in a way that probably worked well in boardrooms and bars. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never facing real consequences. Emily had fallen for that confidence. I'd seen it happen, watched my daughter turn from a smart, independent woman into someone who deferred to her husband on everything. "You've got 30 seconds, I said. "Then I'm calling the cops and having you removed from my property. I'm trying to fix this. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple. You and your wife and my son go to prison for stealing from me. That works just fine. Don't be ridiculous. No judge is going to send anyone to prison over a family disagreement about money. It's not a disagreement, it's theft. $500,000 of theft." Damien smiled, and it was the smile of someone who thought he was smarter than everyone else in the room. "Those transactions were authorized by you. Emily has emails proving it. We can show that everything we did was with your full knowledge and consent. Emails you forged, documents you faked, a paper trail you created specifically to cover your tracks. Prove it. That's what the trial is for. His smile faded. You're really going to do this. You're going to destroy your own family over money. My family destroyed itself. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Emily will never speak to you again. You understand that, right? Even if you win, even if we all go to prison, you'll have lost your daughter forever. I lost her 3 years ago when she decided I was worth less than whatever you promised her. Damien shook his head. You're a bitter old man who can't accept that his kids grew up and moved on. That's all this is. Wounded pride. If that's what you think, you're even stupider than I thought. His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he might take a swing at me, but he was too smart for that. Physical violence would look bad in court, and Damien was all about appearances. I came here to offer you a deal, he said. We'll pay back the money, all of it. Set up a payment plan, make it right. In exchange, you drop the charges. No. Tom, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You stole from me. You used my daughter to do it. You spent 3 years lying to my face while planning how to destroy my business. And now you want me to accept an apology and some promises about future payments? No. You're going to face the consequences of what you did. You're making a mistake. No, I'm not. You made the mistake when you thought I was too stupid to notice what you were doing. Damien stood there, breathing hard, his perfect composure cracking. Emily was right about you. You're a small man with small dreams, and you can't handle the fact that she wanted something bigger. Get off my property. Or what? You'll have me arrested. That's your answer to everything now, isn't it? Call the cops, file charges, destroy people's lives. You destroyed your own life, Damien. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. He took a step closer, and I could see the anger in his eyes, the frustration. He wasn't used to people standing up to him. He was used to charm and intimidation working, used to getting his way through force of personality. You think you're so righteous, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You think you're the victim here, but you're just a selfish old man who can't let go of control. Emily told me about you, about how you lorded your sacrifices over them their whole lives, how you made them feel guilty for every dollar you spent on them. You didn't raise children, Tom. You raised debtors, and now you're surprised they wanted to break free. Is that what you told yourself? I asked. That stealing from me was liberation? We were taking what was ours, what Emily deserved after a lifetime of being made to feel small. Emily deserved honesty. She deserved a father who worked himself to the bone to give her a better life. What she didn't deserve was a husband who turned her into a criminal. I didn't turn her into anything. I showed her what was possible. I showed her a world beyond construction sites and blue-collar limitations. You kept her in a box her whole life, and I let her out. You led her to prison, Damien. That's where this ends. You know it, and I know it. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to turn this around. But there wasn't one. The evidence was too strong, the case too solid. He'd been sloppy, overconfident, and now he was trapped. Fine, he said finally. You want to play it this way? We'll see you in court. And when this is over, when you're sitting alone in your empty house with no family and no one who gives a damn about you, I hope it was worth it. It will be. He left without another word, his expensive shoes tracking sawdust across the unfinished floor. Frank watched him go, then looked at me. Boss, you okay? I'm fine. Let's get back to work. But I wasn't fine. I went home that night and sat in Sarah's chair, and for the first time since this started, I cried. Not for what I'd lost, but for what had never really been there. My kids, the ones I'd thought I was raising, didn't exist. They'd been replaced by strangers who looked like them, but had none of their warmth, none of their love. I'd been building a life for people who didn't exist. The tears came hard, racking sobs that I couldn't control. I cried for Sarah, who'd died believing our family was whole. I cried for the years I'd wasted trusting people who'd never deserved it. I cried for the grandchildren I'd never have, the family dinners that would never happen, the future that had been stolen from me. When the tears finally stopped, I felt empty, hollow, like something essential had been carved out of me and nothing would ever fill the space. I got up and went to the kitchen, made myself a sandwich I didn't want, and ate it standing over the sink, washed the plate and put it away. Went through the motions of living because that's what you do. You keep going, even when you don't want to. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Grant? A woman's voice, professional and cool. This is Karen Matthews, Lucas Grant's attorney. I'm calling to see if we can arrange a meeting. My client would like to discuss a possible resolution to this situation. Tell your client to talk to the prosecutor. I'm done negotiating. Mr. Grant, I understand you're angry, but you don't understand anything. Your client is a thief. He stole from me for 3 years. There's nothing to negotiate. He's willing to plead guilty to reduce charges. He'll pay full restitution, testify against the others, cooperate completely. In exchange, we're asking for probation instead of prison time. No. Mr. Grant, no. Lucas doesn't get to walk away from this. None of them do. They made their choices. Now they live with the consequences. You're sentencing your own son to prison. My son sentenced himself when he decided to become a criminal. I'm just the one who caught him. I hung up before she could say anything else. The house was quiet again, always quiet now. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the empty chairs around the table, remembering family dinners that would never happen again, birthday cakes and Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas mornings, all of it gone, blown away like dust. I went to bed early that night, but sleep didn't come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything and nothing. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emily. Dad, please, we can fix this. We can make this right. Don't let it go to trial, please. I stared at that message for a long time. Thought about calling her, hearing her voice, maybe finding some way to bridge the gap between us. But what would I say? That I forgave her? That would be a lie. That I understood? I didn't. That we could move forward? We couldn't. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. The preliminary hearing was held in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and air conditioning. Lucas sat at the defense table with his lawyer, Karen Matthews, who specialized in white-collar crime. Emily and Damien sat behind him, both wearing expensive clothes and neutral expressions. I sat on the other side with Stan and Jennifer Walsh, watching as the prosecutor laid out the case. She was methodical, presenting evidence piece by piece, building a narrative that was impossible to ignore. Fake invoices, shell companies, forged signatures, money flowing out of my accounts and into Lucas's pockets, then spreading to Emily and Damien through a network of dummy corporations. It took 3 hours. Lucas's lawyer tried to object, tried to claim that everything was authorized, that this was a family dispute rather than a criminal case. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, named Patricia Hendricks, wasn't buying it. Ms. Matthews, she said, your client created false documents to justify withdrawing money from the plaintiff's business accounts. That's not a family dispute. That's fraud. Your Honor, these transactions were... I've read the evidence, Counselor. Save your arguments for trial. The defendant is bound over on all charges. Lucas's face went pale. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him, but he didn't seem to hear. He was staring at me, his eyes wide and disbelieving, like he couldn't understand how this had happened. I stared back, my expression flat. Emily started crying. Damien put his arm around her, whispering something I couldn't hear. She shook her head, pushing him away, and stood up. For a moment I thought she might walk over to me, might say something, but she didn't. She just stood there, tears running down her face, looking at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The hearing ended. We filed out of the courtroom into the hallway, and that's when Lucas made his move. He walked straight up to me, his face flushed, and jabbed a finger at my chest. "You happy now?" he said. "You've destroyed my life, destroyed Emily's life, destroyed everything. Is this what you wanted?" "I wanted my kids to not be thieves," I said quietly. "But I didn't get that, did I?" "We were trying to help you. All of this, everything we did was to grow the company, to make it into something significant. But you were too blind to see it. You stole $500,000. That's not helping, that's stealing. It was an investment. In what? Your BMW, Emily's designer wardrobe, Damien's failed business ventures." Lucas's lawyer grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Don't say another word. Not here." But Lucas wasn't listening. "You've always been like this, always so rigid, so unwilling to take risks. Mum understood. She wanted us to be more than you were, to reach higher. But you just wanted us to be construction workers like you." "Your mother wanted you to be honest," I said. "She wanted you to work hard and treat people with respect. You're right that I'm not what she hoped for, but neither are you." He swung at me then, a wild haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped back, and his fist hit air. His lawyer and Stan both moved in, separating us, voices raised. A bailiff came out of the courtroom to restore order. Emily was still crying. Damien was on his phone, probably calling his lawyer. Lucas was breathing hard, being held back by his own attorney. And I stood there, calm and cold, watching my family fall apart. "Mr. Grant," Jennifer Walsh said quietly, "let's go." I followed her down the hallway, leaving them behind. Behind me, I could hear Lucas shouting something, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. We walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. The contrast was jarring, going from the dim institutional hallways into the warm spring day. People were walking past, going about their normal lives, completely unaware of the drama that had just unfolded inside. "That went well," Jennifer said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "The judge saw right through their defense. This is going to be a strong case." "How long until trial?" 3, maybe 4 months. We'll use the time to build the case even stronger, make sure there's no possibility of them wriggling out of this." "Good." She looked at me carefully. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine. Tom, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of families torn apart by criminal cases. It's never easy, even when you know you're doing the right thing." "I'm fine," I said again, and she nodded, accepting the lie because that's what people do. I drove home in silence, the radio off, just the sound of the engine and the road. When I got there, the house felt even emptier than usual. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the space that used to be filled with life and noise, and now held nothing but echoes. I went to my office and opened my laptop. There were emails from Patricia, more analysis of the financial records, more evidence of the theft. I read through them methodically, adding notes, organizing the information. It was busy work, really. The case was already strong enough, but it gave me something to do, something to focus on besides the hollow feeling in my chest. Around dinner time, Frank called. "Boss, just checking in. You okay?" "I'm fine, Frank. You keep saying that, but I don't believe you. Listen, a few of us are grabbing beers after work tomorrow. You should come." "I don't think. It's not a request, Tom. You've been alone too much. Come have a beer, shoot the shit, be around people who aren't lawyers for a change." I almost said no. Almost told him I needed to work, needed to prepare for the trial, needed to do anything except sit in a bar pretending I was okay. But something in his voice stopped me. Frank was worried, really worried, and maybe he was right. Maybe I had been alone too much. "All right," I said. "Tomorrow, but just one beer." "Whatever you say, boss." The trial started 3 months later, on a cold Monday morning in October. The courtroom was packed, filled with reporters and curious onlookers who'd read about the case in the papers. A father prosecuting his own children for embezzlement made for good headlines. I'd stopped reading the articles after the first few. They painted me as either a tragic figure or a vindictive monster, depending on which paper you read. Neither version felt accurate. Jennifer Walsh stood in front of the jury and laid out our case. She was good at her job, presenting the evidence in a way that made it impossible to ignore. She showed them the fake invoices, the forged signatures, the trail of money flowing out of my accounts and into theirs. She brought in expert witnesses who testified about the shell companies, about the sophisticated fraud scheme Lucas had created. Lucas's lawyer, Karen Matthews, tried to fight back. She claimed that I'd authorized all the transactions, that my children had been acting with my full knowledge and consent. She brought in emails that showed me approving transfers, signing documents, giving permission. Jennifer Walsh tore them apart one by one. She showed how the emails had been spoofed, how the signatures had been forged, how every piece of evidence Matthews presented was fake. She was relentless, methodical, and by the end of the second day, I could see the jury turning. Lucas sat at the defense table, his face pale and drawn. He'd lost weight since the preliminary hearing, dark circles under his eyes. His lawyer kept whispering to him, but he barely responded. He just sat there, staring at the table, looking like a man who'd already lost. Emily and Damien were at a separate trial, scheduled to start after Lucas's concluded. They sat in the gallery watching, both of them dressed like they were attending a funeral. Maybe they were. On the third day, Jennifer called me to the stand. "Mr. Grant," she said, "can you tell the jury about your relationship with your son before these events occurred?" I looked at Lucas. He was staring at me now, his eyes red-rimmed. "We were close once," I said. "When he was young, he used to come to the construction sites with me on weekends. He'd wear a little plastic hard hat and carry around tools, pretending to help. He was a good kid, smart, curious. I thought he'd take over the business someday." "What changed?" "His mother died. After that, he pulled away. Said he needed space, needed to find his own path. I respected that. I gave him money to start his consulting business, helped him however I could. I thought I was supporting his dreams." "When did you realize something was wrong?" "About 2 years ago. I noticed discrepancies in my accounts. Small things at first, then larger amounts. I started digging, keeping records. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that it was a mistake. But the more I found, the worse it got." "Why didn't you confront your son immediately?" "Because he's my son." My voice cracked. Because I kept hoping I was wrong. Because confronting it meant admitting that the person I raised, the person I loved, was stealing from me. I wasn't ready to accept that. "What finally made you take action?" I told them about the phone call, about Emily's words, about the wedding that never happened. The courtroom was silent as I spoke. I realized then that it wasn't just about money, I said. They didn't see me as their father anymore. They saw me as a resource, something to be used and discarded when I was no longer useful, and I decided I wasn't going to let that stand. Karen Matthews cross-examined me for 2 hours, trying to make me look vindictive, trying to paint this as a family squabble blown out of proportion. But the evidence was too strong. Every question she asked, I had an answer backed up by documents, by expert testimony, by the clear trail of money flowing out of my life and into theirs. "Mr. Grant," she said at one point, "isn't it true that you've always been controlling, that you've always used money as a way to manipulate your children?" "No." "Didn't you threaten to cut them off if they didn't do what you wanted?" "I never threatened them. I supported them. There's a difference." "But you did cancel your daughter's wedding out of spite, didn't you?" "I cancelled a wedding I was paying for after discovering that my daughter and her husband were stealing from me. That's not spite. That's common sense." "You didn't know about the theft when you cancelled the wedding." "I knew enough. I knew they'd been discussing me behind my back, mocking me, planning to push me out of my own life. I knew I'd been reduced to nothing but a checkbook in their eyes, and I decided I was done being treated that way. The jury was listening intently. I could see some of them nodding slightly, understanding what I was saying. Matthews tried a different approach. "Mr. Grant, do you love your son?" The question hit me like a punch. I looked at Lucas, sitting at the defense table with his head down, and thought about all the years we'd had together, the good years before Sarah died, before everything fell apart. "I loved the son I thought I had," I said finally. "The honest one, the one who wouldn't steal from his own father. That son doesn't exist anymore. I don't know who that man is sitting over there." Lucas flinched like I'd hit him. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about the forged documents, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. Jennifer Walsh built her case brick by brick, creating a structure so solid that nothing could knock it down. Lucas never took the stand. His lawyer advised against it, knowing that Jennifer would destroy him on cross-examination. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict on all counts. Lucas stood as the judge read the verdict, his shoulders shaking. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, but he pulled away. He turned and looked at me, and the expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not even hatred, just emptiness, like something inside him had died. "Does the defendant have anything to say before sentencing?" Judge Hendricks asked. Lucas cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor." He turned to face me directly. "Dad," he said, "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need to say it. I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. I convinced myself I was building something, that the ends justified the means, but that was a lie. I was just stealing. And I'm sorry." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Judge Hendricks sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 4. She also ordered him to pay full restitution, which meant everything he owned would be liquidated to pay me back. As the bailiffs led Lucas away, he looked at me one more time. I held his gaze until he disappeared through the door. Emily's trial started 2 weeks later. It went faster than Lucas's, mostly because the evidence was even clearer. She'd provided access to accounts, to files, to everything Damien needed to bleed my business dry. Her lawyer tried to claim she'd been manipulated, that Damien had controlled her, but the emails between them told a different story. They'd planned this together, calculated every move, decided together how much they could take before I'd notice. The jury found her guilty in 3 days. I sat in the courtroom and watched my daughter's face as the verdict was read. She didn't cry this time. She just stared straight ahead, her expression blank, like she'd gone somewhere else entirely. Damien's trial was the longest, stretching over 2 weeks. His lawyer was expensive and aggressive, attacking every piece of evidence, every witness, trying to create reasonable doubt. But Jennifer Walsh was better. She showed the jury Damien's history, the pattern of businesses he'd destroyed, the lives he'd ruined. She painted him as a predator who'd targeted my family specifically, who'd seduced my daughter as part of a plan to steal everything I'd built. The jury convicted him on every charge. Judge Hendricks gave him 8 years, no possibility of parole before 6. Emily got 4 years. She cried when the sentence was read, looking at me through her tears like she expected me to do something, to stop this somehow. But I just sat there, watching as the bailiffs led her away. The business recovered slowly. It took 6 months to untangle all the fraudulent transactions, to close the shell companies, to repair the damage Lucas and Damien had done. Patricia Chen helped me set up new systems, new safeguards, to make sure nothing like this could happen again. The restitution payments came in gradually. Lucas's BMW was sold at auction. Emily and Damien's house went on the market. Every asset they had was liquidated to pay back what they'd stolen. It wouldn't be enough to cover everything, but it was something. My phone stopped ringing. The texts stopped coming. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. I sold the house in December, 9 months after the trials ended. It was too big for one person, too full of memories that hurt to look at. I bought a smaller place downtown, a condo with no yard, no extra rooms, no space for a family that didn't exist anymore. The moving day was harder than I'd expected. Packing up 30 years of life into boxes, deciding what to keep and what to throw away. Every item told a story. Sarah's favorite coffee mug, Lucas's high school baseball trophies, Emily's art projects from elementary school. I threw most of it away, donated it to charity, sold it in a yard sale, put it on the curb for anyone who wanted it. By the time I finished, I had maybe a dozen boxes of things I actually cared about. Everything else was just weight. Frank and some of the guys from the crew helped me move. They didn't ask questions, didn't comment on how little I was taking with me. They just loaded the truck and unloaded it at the new place and stayed for pizza afterward. "Nice place, boss," Frank said, looking around the condo. "Good size for one person." "Yeah. You going to be okay here?" "I'll be fine." He looked at me like he wanted to say something else but decided against it. Instead, he just clapped me on the shoulder and left with the others. I spent my first night in the new place, sitting on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, eating pizza out of the box. The condo was quiet in a different way than the house had been. Smaller, more contained. The walls felt closer, the ceilings lower. It felt like living in a box. But it was mine, clean and new and untainted by memories of betrayal. On Christmas Eve, I sat in my new living room and opened my laptop. I'd been writing down everything that happened, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand how my family had fallen apart. The document was over 100 pages now, a detailed account of every betrayal, every lie, every moment when I'd had to choose between my children and my dignity. I saved the file and closed the laptop. Then I pulled out a box of old photos, the ones I'd packed away after the trials. Sarah and me on our wedding day, Lucas as a baby, Emily learning to ride a bike. All the moments that had seemed so important at the time. I looked at those photos for a long time, really looked at them, trying to see where it had all gone wrong. Was it after Sarah died? Before? Had the seeds of their betrayal always been there, waiting for the right conditions to grow? I didn't know. Maybe it didn't matter. I put the photos back in the box and put the box in a closet where I wouldn't have to see it every day. There was a knock at my door around 8 o'clock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find Stan Morrison standing in the hallway, holding a bottle of whiskey. "Thought you might want some company," he said. I let him in. We sat in my living room and drank, not saying much, just existing in the same space. Around midnight, he asked the question I'd been waiting for someone to ask. Was it worth it? I thought about that. About Lucas in prison, about Emily crying as the bailiffs led her away, about Damien's smug expression finally cracking as the judge read his sentence, about the $500,000 being slowly paid back, about the business that was stronger now than it had been in years, about the empty condo and the silent phone and the family photos packed away in a closet. "I don't know," I said, "but it was necessary. That's not the same thing." "No, it's not." Stan poured another drink. "You did the right thing, Tom. You know that, right? What they did was wrong. Criminal. You had every right to pursue charges. Having the right to do something doesn't mean it doesn't cost you." He nodded slowly. "No, I guess it doesn't." We sat in silence for a while, drinking, thinking our own thoughts. Finally, Stan said, "Sarah would have wanted you to forgive them." "I know, but she loved those kids. She would have found a way to bring the family back together." "Sarah never had to face what I faced. She died believing they were good people. Maybe it's better that way." "Maybe." Stan finished his drink and stood up. "I should go. But Tom, if you need anything, you call me. Any time, day or night." "I know. Thanks for coming by." He left around 1 in the morning. I sat in the quiet condo, listening to the city sounds outside my window, and thought about Sarah. She would have hated this, all of it. She would have wanted me to forgive, to find some way to keep the family together. She always believed in second chances, in redemption, in the power of love to fix broken things. But Sarah was gone, and the things that were broken now couldn't be fixed with love. I went to bed but couldn't sleep. Lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything and nothing. About the years ahead, empty and quiet. About growing old alone. It was a bleak picture, but it was honest. And after years of lies, honesty felt like something worth holding on to.